This is KC9VKV, and I think we'll do our little feature here as we got the time. This is called Adventures in Radioland, and this segment, Your Voice Made Better for Radio. Well, let's talk a little bit about the human voice. Now, we all have heard those million-dollar voices on commercial radio stations. And as a ham radio operator, we're doing the same thing, using our voices to communicate through the magic of radio. But even though there are differences between the two, here are a few learned techniques that we can use to help develop a more interesting on-air voice. Let me tell you a short story about a revelation I had about voices. Now, my younger days of being in broadcasting, the first thing I had to deal with was mic fright. Needless to say, it was challenging. The very thought of hundreds of people out there listening to each word you say is enough to make one start to stutter. But I just reasoned that this was the career I wanted, so I would just have to get over it. So I started to play a game to keep from thinking about all those people listening, and the game was... It was about how to make effective communication, how to be most effective. I'm sure you've heard there are thousands of ways of saying something. Well, that's true, but there are maybe 10 ways of saying it best. Well, this little game replaced my on-air jitters and helped me become a more involved communicator. But the real story I want to tell you about has to do with voices and how to use them. In my early days, I was a high-energy rock guy, fairly fast-paced, short lines, a move-it-along kind of approach. But as I got older, there was an evolution into a more mature delivery, a little slower pace, and I started using the phones a lot more, looking for the people influence. And along with this newer pace came a need to have a more mature voice. So I was working on that when I came to WHAS Radio in 1970 as production director. So in addition to production, I had a weekend on-air shift. And on that first air personalities that I met was WHAS sports announcer Van Vance. We were both in the same studio. I was at the mix console, and he was at the news desk. And it was time for his report. So I introduced him, and he began. And then I realized there was something odd that was happening. I could hardly hear him. In the headphones, he was $1 million, but in the studio, his projection level was very, very low. I listened again to the headphones. He sounded 10 feet tall and extremely smooth. A new revelation. The harder you push your voice, the thinner it gets. Taken to another level, a scream can be heard a long way because it is of only one tonality. What we're looking for in radio is a more wideband voice, and this can be achieved by lowering your voice projection. Now, I don't mean a whisper, but I do mean a decrease in loudness, as if you were speaking into someone's ear just a foot away. I think about it the next time you're on the air. Remember, their ear is just 1 foot away. And FYI, for this exercise, advance your mic gain 20% and talk lighter 20%. So your ALC reading is still mid-range to 2/3, even with the increase in mic gain. And leave your ALC meter displayed to guide your projection level. Well, that's a thought. You can consider it and maybe try to play with it a little bit, but I do know that the projection part is true. The harder you push your voice, the thinner it gets. And, Van's voice, it's just beautiful, but he's very, very light in the projection area. So anyway, this is the KC9VKV and the Friday afternoon Qso-Vlog net. If you've got a radio you want to check out, give me a shout.